All right, looks like things are going. And welcome to the first bowl session. I am the Veteran Wargamer. My name is Jay Arnold, host of the Veteran Wargamer podcast, and just doing a little experiment here with kind of a hobby chat here on the old YouTube, just adjusting my camera, making sure y'all can see my workspace here. And I'm going to be working on some roads today. I found a couple of different techniques online that looking around trying to find an economical way to make some roads for our 15 millimeter World War II gaming. And I'm also into 15 mil for sci-fi, so these roads are going to work for lower tech worlds or marginal worlds. So definitely going to be able to use them in a variety of different venues. I think if things go well, I might even be able to use these as like walking paths or small trails in 28 millimeter games, and in 6 mil games, because we also do 6 mil sci-fi and other genres. Gonna be useful for that as well. So thank you for tuning in. Feel free to chat at me in the little chat box on your YouTube screen, and I'll answer any questions you have to the best of my ability. So just to go over what we have for our materials, I've got this is just a 1 foot by 1 foot cork tile. It's just about 1/4 of an inch thick, and that's going to be our road surface. I've got a handy Logan adapter rule tool that I'm going to use for measuring and cutting the cork here into strips. I've got a disposable snap blade knife that you can pick up at any hardware store, just about anywhere. I've got some paintable, and this is important, paintable window and door siliconized acrylic caulk, which we're going to use to texture the road surface as we go, and we'll see how that goes. And then to keep our work surface clear, we're going to use some parchment paper. So we'll lay that down before we start getting the caulk out. And to keep my hands free from any extraneous grime and grit and whatnot, because I do use my hands to work. I am a barber, in case you didn't already know. Just some disposable nitrile gloves. So a look at some of the social media stuff going on. Okay, not a big deal. So we'll just keep on trucking. So anyhow, I'll send out a bear with me. Okay. Anyhow, all right. So I guess I'll just start cutting, and until someone logs in and starts talking, I'll just do what I can. Now, with this Logan adapter rule, you'll notice that I talked about this particular tool on my episode about working with foam board, and you can see it's got this channel here, and that's where the regular tool would fit in. And they've got straight cuts, or tools for straight cuts, and they've also got cool tools for angled cuts that you can get. The big difference is, of course, the angled cut does exactly what it sounds like. It angles the cut at a 45-degree angle, which can be handy for a variety of reasons. I'm going to try to make an adjustment here real quick on my camera and hope it doesn't. Bear with me here. This is highly unprofessional of me, I know. Wait, is that going to work? No. Do that. Oh, that's much better. Okay. Okay, so that's not much better, is it? Oh well. Okay, moving right along. Now, since everything I've read says that cork just destroys your blades quickly, and the blades that go into the Logan adapter rule tools aren't terribly expensive, but they're certainly more expensive than a cheap disposable snap blade knife. So I'm going to use I'm going to use this for my cutting tonight. Most of them that you get nowadays are going to have this locking capability. So go ahead and you're going to want to use that. Now, the good thing about the Logan adapter rule is it's right at 2 inches wide. So any cut that you make, as long as you line everything up nice and square, is going to be right at about 2 inches. So I'll get this nice and lined up, and we'll got to extend that a little bit. It's okay. And just like I said on the foam board episode, I'm going to go ahead and take multiple passes rather than try to make it through in one go. And that should just about have it. All right, now there's our first road section. All right, and we've got one person watching. Hello, viewer. Feel free to say something. You can ask me anything that you like in the little chat below, and answer any questions or comments. Let's go ahead and have a conversation while we're doing this. So feel free to say anything that you like, and I do try to keep it PG-13, so please keep your comments safe in that regard. If you haven't had an opportunity yet, this is sticking. This is funny. These cork tiles are somewhat sticking to the adapter roll because I had actually sprayed them with some spray adhesive because I was going to try to laminate them and make walls out of the sections, but that didn't work too great. So in order to avoid having to mess with that, I'm going to lay these strips that I cut off to the side. Now, at some point, I'm going to need to cut some shapes, some bends and some curves and some T-junctions and that sort of thing. But seeing as I like having lots of road, I'm going to just go ahead and probably focus on doing straight road sections while we talk tonight. So I plan on being on for, I don't know, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, something like that. I definitely want to get some progress made on these just to see how things go. So far, so good. So if you are just joining, I am the Veteran War Gamer. My name is Jay Arnold. I'm glad to have you watching. And we are just making some road sections out of some 1/4-inch cork tile. And that one got away from me. That's okay. These are going to be country roads. They don't have to be perfectly straight. Good enough is good enough in this case. So I'm not too overly concerned. I think I'm going to end up with 6 strips off of this square. I'm going to go ahead and I've got 2 more squares that I intend on using tonight. So we'll get all these cut, and then next step is we're going to lay some of this parchment paper down to protect our work surface, because when we get the caulk out, it's probably going to get pretty nasty pretty quick. So as we continue on, I am making terrain for World War II games in 15mm. If you've been paying attention to my Twitter feed or Facebook, primarily the Twitter feed, I've been really focusing a lot on What a Tanker from Two Fat Lardies. Been really enjoying it. If you haven't checked it out yet, and I highly recommend that you do so. My most recent podcast episode 38, was all about What a Tanker and what a great game it is, and I highly recommend you check it out. The Two Fat Lardies, they were on episode 37. That's Nick Skinner, the primary author of the rules, and Richard Clark. and we just had a great time talking about where Two Fat Lardies came from and how they came up with the rules. And it was I would go ahead and say, of the 38 episodes that I've done, it's in my top 5 favorite episodes that I've recorded. But yeah, we're doing a lot of What a Tanker between my brother and our friends, and we're just having a lot of fun with it. So we want to do some terrain, make a nice, be able to make a nice table for folks to play with us on. The Recruits convention is coming up in September. We're trying to prepare for that. We'd like to have a relatively large game. Probably going to go 2 or 3 sessions across the Saturday of the convention. And if you're not familiar with how an American game convention is run, generally speaking, you can anticipate having the schedule broken up into a number of sessions, and each session is usually going to be somewhere between 2.5 to 4. If I recall correctly, the sessions at Recruits are 4-hour sessions, so quite possibly we're going to be looking at 8 to 12 hours. I'm thinking we'll probably stick with 8 because I hadn't really sat down and thought about exactly how much time we're going to be talking about, and that is an awful lot of time to try to run a game. Not that it can't be done; it absolutely can be done. In fact, I've done it before, running an all-day game like that. But it takes a lot out of you. You in the best possible situation, you're looking at being in a temperature-controlled room with 200 to 300 of your best friends. The Recruits convention is held basically in a gymnasium at a high school. It's the high school that my brother and I graduated from, Lee Summit High School in Lee Summit, Missouri. The folks who run it do a great job, and it's called Recruits because the original purpose was to get youth in Lee Summit interested in the gaming hobby. So it's not just war games, it's role-playing games, it's tabletop games of all types, board games, card games, what have you. And it's just a really great atmosphere. It's just a whole lot of fun to participate in. So if you are able to get to the Kansas City area in September, it's early September this year. It's I want to say the first full weekend of September, whatever those dates are. I don't have it right at my fingertips, but it's definitely worth checking out. And I'm losing my camera. Bear with me. This is all new to me. So let's see if we can get this fixed here. Yeah, it's not too bad. We'll go with that. So, where was I? Recruits. Yeah, it's in a big gym, and it's people playing games and having a lot of fun. And it's just got a great spirit. It's got a great feeling. It's got a great energy to it. I have probably talked about Recruits more than any other topic on the podcast. And if you're tired of hearing about it, well, I'm going to keep talking about it because I like it that much. And if you don't like it, that's fine. It might not be to everyone's taste. If you're tired of me talking about it, hey, let me know. I might dial it back. Spoiler alert, I probably won't, but you never know. So as I mentioned earlier, if you're watching, feel free to post a question or a comment. I'd like to turn these into conversations with you, the listener, or you, the viewer, depending on how you want to look at it. So now specifically, I said that we're building these roads for our World War II games, primarily for 15mm scale figures, but my brother and I have decided that we're going to set our World War II games in southern France during Operation Dragoon. Oh, thank you for the like, whoever liked that. Whoever threw the like up. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So, Operation Dragoon, southern France, the second French invasion. We just feel it doesn't get enough love from folks. You know, the D-Day invasion in Normandy in June of 1944 gets an awful lot of press, and deservedly so. Opened up, well, in reality, a third European front. As I'm sure you know, the Italian front was very hotly contested for a significant time, or for a significant portion of the war. The Italian front doesn't get much love either, which is unfortunate because there were some desperate actions fought. The famed 442nd Regimental Combat Team earned their place in history in Italy. The 442nd 100th, I should say, because the 100th Infantry Battalion started out that, started their combat experience in Italy. All right, so that's got us 18 strips that we're gonna. I may not get all 18 covered with this caulk today, but at the very least, we're going to be able to get some practice on our technique. Okay, I'm going to put the knife away. I should be done with it for tonight. Just a little disposable snap blade knife. You can get it just about any hardware store. This one costs, I think, like $1.59. We just had a Ace Hardware store open up in our county, and I've been taking advantage of their services for a number of the projects I've got brewing at home. The house. Okay, this is parchment paper. You could also use wax paper for this. I'm just putting this down to protect the work surface. Should have gotten some tape to tape this down, but it'll be okay. All right. All right. But anyhow, bear with me, friend. Doing some social media stuff real quick. Bear with me. So, anyhow. Oh, good morning from a European insomniac. That's unpainted lead syndrome. So, ULS, good morning to you. If I had my guess, there's a British insomniac that sent me a message on Twitter. So I need to send him a message real quick specifically. So bear with me. Maybe it's the same one, maybe not. I don't know. Bear with me. Anyway. Oh, okay, should be Neil you're talking. Yeah, that is Neil. Neil Shook of the Meeples Adventures podcast. Unpainted Lead Syndrome says he's in Belgium. Well, welcome. I don't know whether to say welcome in French or Walloon, but I guess it'd be bonjour, willkommen, bienvenue. That's it, isn't it? From the classic movie and play musical. I'm gonna glove up here before we get our caulking out. Cabaret, willkommen, bienvenue, welcome. So, not wishing to risk copyright issues, I'll stop singing there. That, and I'm sure y'all do not want to hear any more of my singing than you need to. Joel Franklin, recent guest on the most recent episode of the Veteran Wargamer. Bear with me, I'm gonna grab some tools real quick. Joel is an old friend of mine. And by that, oh, okay. Unpainted Lead Syndrome says, nope, I'm from the north of the country, Flanders. So speaking Flemish, I would guess. I'm not. I should know better, considering I studied German for some time. Just enough to be dangerous, anyway. Oh, criminy. Popsicle sticks everywhere. I'll just need a few of these. I'll bag the rest of these up. These craft sticks that you can get at Walmart or just about any major store that has any type of art supply department are awfully handy. So I'll be using them to spread our caulk. Now, an important part about this is that this product is paintable. And of course that makes sense because it's going to be used for terrain. Now, I've already cut. Unpainted Lead Syndrome says, just enough German to shout stuff while you're pushing your German troops around, right? Exactly. So I guess what I'll need to do, because my plan is to go ahead and run kind of a bead along the side here to get my corners. So what I'll probably end up doing is start it like this. I'm kind of figuring this out as I go, so bear with me here. Now, hopefully, this will give us a little bit of a shoulder, a little bit of a verge to work from. Now, it's going to be important that the ends stay unobstructed. Because you're going to want to, I'll just go a little bit heavier with this stuff. It's all right. There's plenty of it, and we're just kind of experimenting right now. And one of the great things about building terrain, especially something that doesn't have to be quite exact, like a road section, is that you can experiment and mess around until you find what works. Hopefully that's got it tacked down enough. Put a nice ribbon on here like that. Okay, well that actually used quite a bit more of this caulk than I thought it would. That's all right. We'll smooth this out with a craft stick here, and you know what? This might end up being just a terrible failure, but we won't know until we try, right? So now, if you're familiar with some of the concepts of cake decorating, I guess some of them would apply here. It's almost like applying a what's called a crumb coat And what a crumb coat does, it allows you to put a very thin layer of your frosting on the cake. See, this is exactly what I wanted to avoid. Get it on the end like this. But that's okay. This might not have been the best. This might not have been the best material to use for this, but that's all right. Well, again, we're experimenting. We're just seeing what works for us. And you don't know till you try, right? So I'm just going to smooth this out a little bit more. Now, my intent is that on the edges, when it's all said and done, we'll paint it a nice dark brown. Along these edges, it's kind of verge, for lack of a better term. Shoulder, if you will. Oh, that looks nice. I'm liking that. Okay, hold on. See if we can apply some more of that there. There we go. Yeah. Smooth this out a little bit. So we'll paint it brown. Actually, I'll mix some latex, some house paint basically, with a little bit of sand, and paint the whole thing with the sand paint. And then put some foam foliage. There's a company called Woodland Scenics that makes materials for landscaping. Well, it's designed for landscaping your model railroad layout, but it's awfully handy for your war game terrain also. They make a product called foliage, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's designed. It's kind of like a cut up foam product, and it's designed for going on their tree armatures to act as foliage as on trees. And it's scale agnostic. You can use it in any scale, because it's kind of an impressionistic type approach to landscaping. You're not to terrain making. You're not going to have each individual leaf modeled unless you're completely and utterly insane. This isn't that bad mess-wise. Let's see if we can't clean this up a little bit. Okay, that's not too horrible. I think I'll do one, maybe two more strips just for experimentation purposes and see how it goes. So anyway, we'll let this dry. It'll shrink up just a little bit, but not a lot. It'll shrink up just a little bit. And then we'll paint it with the sand paint. Throw the foliage on these verge areas. Leave most of the center clear of obstruction. Maybe put like that, sometimes on country roads there'll be that little strip of grass growing up in the center of the road. We'll have that. We'll throw a nice wash on it, darken it up quite a bit, and maybe a little bit of dry brushing highlight, and spray it with some type of not filler, but some type of sealer. There you go. That's the word I'm looking for. And hopefully this caulk will be flexible enough that it will not only keep the cork in one piece, but it'll flex if it has to, and it'll be relatively resistant to transport and and that sort of thing. So we're not looking for perfect. We're looking for good enough, because that's my philosophy. Because at the end of the day, if you haven't picked up from the podcast yet, at the end of the day, yes, I like the models, I like the miniatures, I like the terrain. But at the end of the day, for me, it's about playing a game, you know. And if I can get a terrain project to the point where it's good enough to play a game on, hey, that's all I need. That's all I need. And here's the deal. And this is something I kind of picked up. It's the viewpoint I picked up from Peter Barry. I had an episode where I interviewed Peter Barry of Bacchus 6mm. He says that with 6mm figures, you're looking for an impression of the unit. You're not looking for a perfect representation of a particular unit. You're looking for, people have said, and Peter especially says, paint the unit, not the man. Well, what I'm hoping to achieve with our terrain project for Southern France, World War II, is we want the impression of Southern France in World War II, not an exact replication of Southern France. So we're going to be taking some shortcuts in the interest of time and money. We're going to be making some shortcuts. Not surprisingly at all, there are very few companies that make terrain that's designed specifically for Southern France. Plenty of companies make stuff for Italy, and guess what? Southern France looks an awful lot like Italy, because at the end of the day, it's on the Mediterranean Sea. And architecture and build styles and building techniques are heavily dictated by the climate in an area. And when you're talking about Provence and the rest of southern France on the Mediterranean coast, the Riviera coast, as they call it, guess what? It's on the Mediterranean. So it's going to have a climate similar. And just by way of example, open up another tab on your browser, go to Google and Google Marseille, and then Google Naples, and then Google Dubrovnik, and take a look at the old sections of those cities, and they look awfully similar. In fairness to Dubrovnik, when the old city was built, the city was under Venetian rule, so of course it's going to have some Italian influence. But at the end of the day, like I said, if your climate, your climate dictates how you build to a large degree. Now we're probably going to end up with some mismatch on the height of the road, so I'm going to try to make sure that at the very ends it's somewhat close to the actual base here. And this is actually going pretty well. I might do 2-3 more. Now, luckily, I did see when I bought this tube, the small tube of the Ace Hardware brand window and door siliconized acrylic caulk. I did see that they had some larger tubes that would go into a caulk gun, so I might have to buy, just for economy's sake, have to buy a larger tube. And in fact, for even further economy, if I'm going to be doing a lot of this, and I might, they sell 4-packs, and I would imagine it's going to be at a slight discount for buying in bulk. And that's the thing about scratch building terrain like this. Don't be afraid to go into your local hardware store or art supply joint or hobby store and just see what they have. See what you can come up with. My wife, God love her, she took a class on cake decorating and really enjoyed it. She would be so much better at this than I am right now. Just kind of schlocking my way through it. But that's okay. So I was about to say something about Joel earlier when I was looking for these popsicle sticks. I've known Joel for a long time. Actually, at this point, I've known Joel for more than 20 years. Joel and I first. Yeah, Joel says maybe recruit her into decorating the roads. That's probably not a bad idea. But Joel and I first met when we worked for a certain computer company, and I got hired to work on their phone support lines. And he was my primary instructor, and was like a 2-week or 3-week basic computer troubleshooting course that they offered for employees. And continued working with him. I worked with him there at the computer company, and then we worked together. Sparker RN says, "Hey, at least you're using baking paper. I wouldn't have bothered and gotten into trouble." Well, Sparker, when you've been married for almost 15 years like me, well, actually, she doesn't care about these tables, but these are tables I bought long before we were married, actually before I even knew her. But anyhow, yeah, Joel and I also worked at a law firm there in Kansas City in their IT department, and started gaming together. It's probably about that time that we started gaming together, and then I moved to Illinois, kind of lost contact, and I'm not sure exactly how he ended up gaming in. Well, I guess, yeah, he was gaming in my old gaming group, and stayed in touch with those guys. He had a little bit of a hiatus in his gaming, but came back to the fold, and all's well. The first 15 years of the hardest. Well, I've been pretty lucky. I've got a pretty good wife. I don't have any complaints whatsoever. She's stuck with me through some things that other folks might have gotten divorced over. So, and we're working on it. You got to keep working at it, at all of your relationships, not just your romantic ones. But anyhow, I think I'll do one more strip. We're coming up on 40 minutes here in a little bit. It's 10 o'clock Central Daylight Time here in the US of A, where I am. I think I'll do one more strip and we'll call it good for now. Oh, Sparker says, yes, God bless all service wives. Absolutely. All spouses of service members. Absolutely. My cousin David was a service spouse. His wife Michelle was an army doctor. And David actually put his own career on hiatus for a little bit, and was kind of a house husband for a good while. But anyhow, see, this is where getting the caulk and the caulk gun is handy, because you just squeeze the trigger and a little bit more comes out. I'm gonna have to do some cost analysis to see how cost effective this actually is, because I'm gonna end up probably going to get one more road section out of the amount of caulk in this one tube, and I forget exactly how much it cost, but we'll see. Just a reminder, this is paintable caulk. This is an important aspect, because there are some types of caulk that you cannot paint. No matter what you do, you will not be able to get paint on it. And a big part of what we do is, in making our terrain look good, is to get some paint on it. So keep that in mind, folks. I do want to thank you for tuning in. If you're watching this live, I want to thank you if you are watching after the live cast ends. And this is just a little experiment, seeing how things work. So bear with me as I work the kinks out, as I get better at this. You know, if you listen to the first couple of episodes of the Veteran Wargamer podcast, the production values have gone up and gone down. I try to do the best that I can with the materials I have at hand. Early on in the podcast history, I did buy a microphone, and that microphone has stood up pretty well. It's got it came with a stand, and that stand broke tonight while I was trying to get ready for this. So I don't know what I'm going to do next time I try to record. It's just lying here on the mic is just lying here on the table. There were definitely some sound issues with our live play of What a Tanker. That was unfortunate, but that's just how it goes. So this is coming along nicely. So Joel Franklin here, who's I don't know if he's still on or not, but it was earlier. He was, like I said earlier, he is on my most recent episode of the podcast, in which we talk about What a Tanker. It is a good game. I've played more of it than I have any other game in a long time. I've played 2 in-person games, and I think we're on 3 or 4 of games online using Google Hangouts, which is pretty neat way to play a game. I wouldn't want to play anything more complicated than What a Tanker. But if you're just talking about having one element per player like What a Tanker does, it works pretty well. I gotta think that if there's any major issues with what I'm smoothing out here, I should be able to either cover them up with foliage or just cut it off with a knife. So I'm not going to worry about too much on these things. I think any excess that I have, I'm just going to have to let go. So there's a good amount there. I might go ahead and just put it on I'll do that. I'll just put it on. I'm not going to squirt any more out, but I'm going to go ahead and put it on, and at least I'll get some use out of it. Waste not, want not, right? So I gotta think at this point, if you're watching this, it's not by happenstance. You are a fan of the Veteran Wargamer podcast, and you're either... Oh, okay, agree. Sparker RN says agree. Played the first Watt game in Australia, I think. 8 of us had a blast. The most we had so far, Sparker, is 7. We had 7 when we played on Sunday at Titan Games in Springfield, Illinois. Titan Games has become my FLGS, friendly local game store of choice. Really can't say enough good about the staff. They're just starting to break into miniatures gaming. They kind of started with Star Wars X-Wing, and then Armada came out, and they got the Armada stuff in, and now they've got Legion in, and between it and the role-playing games that they sell, they're selling the pre-primed AD&D figures, and they started getting in the Vallejo Game Color series, and I've got some brushes. So Chris Arnold said, made it just in time for you to shut down for the night. I'm not quite done yet, broski. My brother Chris Arnold just logged on. So yeah, if you want to see more of these, let me know. Shoot me a message via YouTube or on Twitter or Facebook. Things are going right. Man, this is so different than doing the podcast, because I normally have show notes to go off of. Well, not normally. I always have show notes to go off of on the podcast. So at the very least, my rambling has a point. Now I was talking about the Titan Games in Springfield. Yeah, they're with the role playing games that they sell there. You know, the D&D and whatnot. They've got the pre painted AD&D figures, which are nice figures, and they're getting in the Vallejo paints, like I mentioned, and paint brushes and whatnot. So just had the Sparker says, well, normally I'd be at work this time of day in Oz, but it's Anzac Day today, Memorial Day, so I'm at home and able to watch. Great. Well, happy Anzac Day. I've got huge amounts of respect for the Australian and New Zealand troops. Actually, one of the first things I did when I got into Afghanistan, they had us all file into a large meeting room, and we got a pretty decent briefing on the situation, not only in Afghanistan in general, but where we were in particular, from an Australian officer. So that was awfully cool. Yeah, I'd like to interact more with some Australian soldiers. But anyhow, yeah, Anzac Day. I'm not sure if it's quite the same thing as Memorial Day for us. We do Memorial Day for us used to be called Remembrance Day, and actually before that it was called Decoration Day. And we kind of have, well, I won't get on that particular soapbox. It's supposed to be for remembering originally it was our war dead, and then they kind of expanded it to veterans of all periods that have gone on, or have, gone on to meet their maker, so to speak. But getting back to Titan Games again, we had success with getting them to order some Plastic Soldier Company stuff for me. So hopefully we'll be able to. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Broski and I are going to form the nucleus of a historical gaming club. They're at Titan Games. I don't know. We'll just have to see what happens. So Joel Franklin says, "Don't get me started on Armistice Day." Sparker says, "Oh, okay, yes, it's Remembrance Day of the UK, but in Oz, the 25th of April was the day of the landings in Gallipoli." I can see why that would be an important to remember. If I have a bucket list, I need to write stuff down, but I do want to see the Gallipoli diorama that the Perrys helped Jackson with, and they're in New Zealand. I'd really like to see that. Okay, Chris Arnold says we can hope in regards to putting together a miniatures, maybe not just historical, but just like a miniatures gaming club, for lack of a better word. I'd like to come up with a pithy, a real pithy acronym based off Central Illinois. Itinerant Hobbyist says, making some roads. Do you mind explaining real quick? Unless you already have, in which case I'll go back and watch. No, I do not mind explaining because I like talking. And so anyway, what I did is I took some 1/4-inch cork tile, and I cut it into 2-inch strips. I used my Logan adapter rule that I talked about on the episode in which I talked about using foam board. Use my Logan adapter rule because it's right at 2 inches across. I set one edge on the, I set 1 inch of the adapter rule like this on the block, and then took a disposable snap blade knife because I understand that now I had my cutting board down when I did that, cutting mat, I should say. and just cut these strips out. It didn't take very long at all. I cut 3 squares worth, so when all's said and done, I'm going to have 12 feet of road. The next step was I went ahead and put this parchment paper down to protect the work surface. Used some window and door caulk from Ace Hardware. I got the small tube because I wasn't sure if I was going to like this product. I do like this product. I'm going to go ahead and get a larger tube that requires the caulking gun. This is a paintable product, which is, of course, going to be very important when all is said and done. As you can see, I kind of blobbed it on, used these popsicle sticks to smooth it all out. The side here, the verge, the shoulder, then we've got the main road surface. Once this dries, my plan is to take some house paint, some interior house paint that I've got, mix it with some sand, paint it all over. Once that's set and dry, I'll come back with some, well, I'll do some shading and with washes and whatnot and some dry brushing, etc. Along the verge here, I'll put some flocking material, a combination of woodland scenics foliage, clump foliage they call it, and flock. I might use a couple of tufts here and there. I've got some tufts from what is the Gamer's Grass? That's the name of the company that I bought it. Well, I bought it from Tim Spikowski of King's Hobbies and Games. Longtime listeners will remember kingshobbiesandgames.com to go and get their Gamer's Grass. So I'll have that all nice. And then once all said and done, I'll have 12 road sections, 12 feet of road. Eventually, I'll be doing some T-intersections or some cross intersections at various angles and whatnot. But for now, I just wanted to do some straight road sections. So, Itinerant Hobbyist, I hope that answers your question. Sparker says, yes, that diorama is just awesome. That is, of course, the Gallipoli diorama there in New Zealand, as is pretty much anything by the Perry twins. I have to agree with you there. Have you seen their Agincourt diorama? I have not seen it in person. Again, that's another thing on my bucket list. Yes, absolutely. I need to actually write down a bucket list. A significant number of items I'm sure would have to do with military history. Itinerant Hobbyist says, yep, thank you. Well, I hope this has been informative and enjoyable for those that are watching. It's 10:16 now in the U.S., or at least in the central U.S., in the central time zone. So I think I've done what I wanted to do tonight. I do like this product. I didn't want to get any more out, so I had quite a bit glommed on this stick, and I just kind of spread it out on this last piece to just kind of finish out for now. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and close up shop. Throughout the night, we had quite a few folks on. I think the most I had at one time is 6, which I've got right now. 4 folks have liked it, so thank you very much. If you've got some comments or remarks, Sparker says, thanks, it's been thought-provoking. Good night. Well, good night to you, Sparker. Good morning, I should say, on the other side of the world. So if you've got some comments, if you have some ideas, anything else you'd like to see, I'm going to continue working on these road sections next, and just keep going, and maybe maybe I'll go ahead and do the next step. I'll go ahead and get the rest of my sections to this stage off camera, and then the next step I'll mix up some paint and paint it on as many sections as I can. If you would like to see another live stream where we play What a Tanker or some other game, it's probably going to be What a Tanker. Right now, I'm looking to do that Friday night. I need to figure out how to do that with the Google Hangout coming through YouTube and then comments coming up on the side like it is right now. So Matt Schreiber, who does Rocky's War Room, knows all about that, so I'll be picking his brain, I'm sure. So if you haven't already, do check out Rocky's War Room. Matt has some great tutorials on science fiction, historical, fantasy, you name it, he does it. He's very good at what he does, and he's also very, very prolific. I am extremely jealous in the project, in the progress on projects that Matt makes. I'll read one last comment. My brother Chris says, speaking of dioramas, if you are ever in Austin, Texas, stop in at the Texas Military Museum. They have several of them showing the different battles of 36th ID were in during both World War I and World War II. I did mention it earlier that we're wanting to do Operation Dragoon. One of the key factors there is, yes, not only does Dragoon not get much in the way of attention from the general populace and wargamers in particular, but he's a big 36th ID nut. And so, just to get a break from Italy, for lack of a better term, we're going to be fighting some of the, maybe not some of the battles, but we'll be near some of the actions the 36th were in. I don't know. Maybe that'll be maybe we'll get some chain of command played with some of the actions, some of the smaller actions that platoons and companies from the 36th were in. Have to do some research on that. See who their German counterparts or opponents were. In researching for What a Tanker, I did find out that the 11th Panzer Division was in southern France during Operation Dragoon. We're going to be a bit ahistorical because I did learn that their assault gun battalion had one Stug 3G. Well, that's no good for me because I have 6 of them. So maybe I'll find another unit. They had Martyr 3s otherwise, and I do want to do some Martyr 3s because I think open top tank destroyers are cool. I think there's some real modeling potential there, and I'd like to explore that space. Chris says 1 sounds good to me. Well, sorry, Bucko. This is going to be slightly ahistorical because if I got 6, I'm using 6. So anyhow, we're coming up on 57 minutes at this point. So I'll go ahead and shut up. I know I like to hear myself talk. I hope you like to hear me talk too. So otherwise you wouldn't be here, right? So anyway, with that in mind, as always, thank you for tuning in tonight. Thank you for watching all the way through, in between hour-long podcasts and hour-long YouTube live streams. That's a lot of me talking, but we'll get this figured out. We'll see how we can't get other guests on to talk also. And as always, if the wargaming you're having isn't any fun, you make it fun. That is all.